Hey guys, Wolvie here, and this is a RWBY video for the channel. So you guys may have or may not have caught the announcement not too long ago that I am doing a little bit less Dissidio Final Fantasy Opera Ambient content. I'm doing a little bit more on RWBY because I do take notice on certain aspects of the trends, and I do get a few more views on RWBY stuff than I do on Defo. So I'm kind of going along with where the trends are for the channel. So with that, this is going to be Volume 8, Chapters 1 and 2. So the premise of this is going to be, I'm going to try to do this sort of thing like with the current volume of the show in groups of like 2 chapters at a time. So that way, I can, focus on like certain aspects of like, the currents of chapters, all that jazz. And with that bit out of the way, the usual disclaimer, any opinion in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And the whole thing with this, mini-series, if you will, again, I'm going to do this in groups of 2 chapters at a time. It's basically going over, like a brief, synopsis of like what happened and where I'm thinking the volume is going to go, all that stuff, and what I think about certain aspects. So, with that, there are going to be spoilers, not only for the chapters 1 and 2 volume 8, but also stuff from past volumes, because it kind of ties into how I feel certain things. Now, I will be talking about a couple of ships that are mentioned in the show in some capacity, and where I think those 2 ships are going. So, with that, we're going to jump into Volume 8, Chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 1 being called Divide. Chapter 2 being called Refuge. Now, for Divide and Refuge, it's pretty much where people are, going away from Team RWBY for whatever reason, as well as the surviving members of Team Juniper. So, with that, so that's pretty much what it is. It's like, with Chapter 1, Yang is the one who's questioning RWBY's leadership skills, all that stuff, and where it's like, and it gets to the point where basically it's like, they're falling into what Salem wants to do, to be all divided, all that stuff, that sort of thing. Now, with Chapter 2, you see here all this stuff. They're mentioning here about trying to get this certain things done. And what I've noticed here in the first 2 chapters is that there is a switch in point of view. It's kind of constant, and when I heard that there was going to be a 1 to 2 day span for the entire volume, my first thoughts were that they're going to have to do so much switching in the point of view, what's going on in this section, what's going on in that section, what's going on in some other sections. It's pretty much, that consistency there. So that's what I particularly like about this particular volume so far, is that, knowing that there's going to be 1 to 2 days tops for the entire volume, there's going to be a constant switch in point of view. Now, what is a bit of a treat for the fans, for those who are still sticking around, is the fact that Blake, oddly enough, is showing like her sense of humor, because it's like, we've noticed that she was a bit more reserved, more or less, throughout the entire series, and for Volume 8, for her to show off her comical side, it's like, it's a real treat. We get to see, Blake, like, letting it all hang out, if you will. Now, granted, the thing that I am a little worried about, in future chapters and even future volumes, is that Team RWBY splitting up once again, and I do feel that is what's going to happen. And if it's not that, and this is one of the ships I'm referring to for this video, it's going to be an angsty Bumblebee, aka the one-sided Bumblebee. Now, the reason why I feel the whole thing with RWBY and Yang right now is going to set up in that direction is because you have to think about Weiss and Blake. It's like, the whole thing with Yang and RWBY is like, from the beginning, it's like the reasons why they wanted to become huntresses is different reasons. Meaning that with RWBY, it's like she wants to make the world a better place. With Yang, it's just for the adventure, shits and giggles, part of my language. But it's like, Yang's reasons are much different than RWBY's. So, this kind of does a bit of a catalyst in that respect. Now, for Blake, back in Volume 1, it's like, she was kind of shocked to hear that RWBY was like wanting to make things better. Not just for humans, but for faunas too. So I think the ideology with Blake and RWBY is similar. And I think with Blake, being more like RWBY than Yang, it's like, this is kind of like the reason why, unfortunately, I do feel Bumblebee is going to be in an angsty direction in that regard, because the ideology is going to come up to the surface, and it's not really going to sit well with Yang and Blake as well as people think it does. Now, for the surviving members of Juniper as well as Oscar, I mean, you already are seeing the whole thing with Ren and Nora, how they are away from each other and with other people. And it's like, and this is the same thing with Bumblebee. It's like, is it really meant to last? And unfortunately, like Bumblebee, I do not see Ren and Nora lasting for much longer. And it's because it's like the way they are, it's like they do reunite. It's like it's not going to be like in the best circumstances. And they may start seeing their absolute worst in each other. Now, for, with that, a little spoiler from Volume 8, Chapter 2. So, Oscar does get captured. I mean, and the only reason why I'm leaving it at that is because although Chapter 3 is out publicly, Chapter 4 is not as of yet. So, I would rather wait till Chapter 4 in the sense of, like, it being available to the public before I go any further. So, with that, like I said, I do feel that Bumblebee and Renora are both being set up for angsty sort of thing, maybe tragedy for one of them. And between the two pairs where I feel there's going to be some tragic consequences is going to be Renora. I'm not going to reveal why, and part of the reason why is through Chapter 4 of Volume 8, which that is available to first members, but it's not publicly available as of yet, so that's that on that. And with that, the reason, and this part of the video is like, I'm going to go into addressing certain aspects of both Bumblebee and Renora. Now, for me personally, I do not care who becomes canon, but I think that an equally big thing here is, will they remain canon? Now, like I said, with Renora and Bumblebee, I don't think either one of them are going to remain canon. Now, the whole thing with Renora, they both have a lot of history going back to childhood. And that's a really good thing for them because it's like they know each other inside and out. But even with that, sometimes certain things don't meant to last even under those circumstances. Now, regarding Yang and Blake, it's just like their ideologies really don't mesh with each other. Because it's like, if you look back at Volume 1, Yang initially referred to Blake as a lost cause because Blake wouldn't say squat, although RWBY was the one who had Blake talking about the book she was reading. And the whole thing with the hug that RWBY and Blake exchanged at the end of Volume 6 is just that RWBY was just beyond happy. And if you look at Blake's facial expression at the end of Volume 6, it's like Blake felt at home with RWBY. And then with Volume 7, that conversation Blake and Yang had about Adam, it's like, I think it's just like, with Yang saying we did what we had to do, but Blake's more like, we really shouldn't be killing people if it's not necessary. And I think the differing ideologies between Blake and Yang is going to surface a little bit further, if not in Volume 8, then maybe Volume 9. So it's really like, yeah, this is kind of why I don't really see Bumblebee remaining canon. I mean, if they become canon, it's perfectly fine with me. I honestly don't care. But like I said, a lot of the differing ideologies those two have may be one of the catalysts of them not remaining canon. And the whole thing with RWBY will be another reason as well, because you're talking somebody's actual family. Now, for Weiss, it's just like, I personally don't think she's going to have much of an impact in Volume 8, because it's like, she doesn't have that many lines at all, but it's like, it is early on in the volume, and anything can happen, you know? But the whole fact that we are probably going to be seeing more of Willow, it might change certain aspects of the team dynamics overall, and all that good stuff. So, let me double check the timer here, because I may be getting going pretty soon. Okay, so, a final words here, you know, just to do a quick recap. Now, with chapters 1 and 2, it is setting the stage, you know, where it's like, people are going away, you know, from various aspects of Team RWBY and or Juniper, as well as, you know, conflicts like within. And it might be setting the stage, in my personal opinion, where it's like, things are going to get worse before it gets better. Now, with that bit out of the way, regarding Renora and Bumblebee, to do a quick recap. Now, those two becoming canon, I can see it, but I don't see either one remaining canon. And the reason why I say it like that is because when it comes to remaining canon, it's like, a lot of work has to be put into things like this by both halves in order to make it work. And I think the differing ideologies is going to hurt them more. It's going to help. And then if you look at Team Stark, which is somehow tied into half of Team RWBY, it's like, you gotta learn from the past mistakes made by the past generations. And until that happens, things tend to repeat itself. Now, with that, I'm going to get going for right. I am going to get going, so that way, I can focus, you know, mentally on chapters 3 and 4. Now, I'm going to try to be doing this every Sunday, so that way, I have a clear and concise thoughts on certain things. And that is that on that. So with Wolfie here, signing off, I will catch you all on the flip side.